Okay. Good morning. We'll call to order this February 11th, Cape Fear Public Utility Authority monthly board meeting. I think we need one motion to excuse Dr. Cannon.
Motion to excuse.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we need a motion to adopt our agenda for today.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we'll have an approval of our minutes from our January 14th meeting.
Got one comment.
Okay.
Back on the, page 5, Finance Committee, it said the committee did not meet in December. We did meet on December the 3rd.
Okay. Any other comments, changes, or take a motion with that?
Move with that amendment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, next, we have public comments.
Mr. Tripp, and you have a handout at your places.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tripp, as you approach the podium, just please state your name and address. And you got 4 minutes for you to speak today.
Thank you for your time. My name is Phil Tripp. I own Tripp Engineering, corner of 419 Chestnut, downtown. Been there for 31 years. Appreciate the time. I am here specifically to talk hydrants. Thank you. Fire hydrants. We did a project, got it permitted back in 2024 for a 16-unit townhome project off of Wilshire Boulevard called Oak Haven. It's right across from the intersection with Page Avenue. We designed a 8-inch fire main. Domestic and fire main are separate. The domestic has a master meter with a main that feeds the individual units, and then we have a 8-inch fire main with 2 hydrants that provide fire protection for the property. My issue is the utility authority will not allow the fire hydrants to be public. It's a dead end. I understand that. It's got 8-inch main with 2 hydrants, so the capacity's there. My issue is who maintains them. I talked to the city fire department. They do not maintain them. CFPUA obviously doesn't want them, so they don't maintain them. So the issue for me is who does. So it belongs to the HOA. I don't know anybody with HOAs that are qualified to be operating fire hydrants. So my concern is, in the event of emergency, and the fire department's there within 2 or 3 minutes, and they have a kitchen fire going on, and this could be a year down the road, 10 years down the road. If hydrants have not been operated, hadn't been maintained, so the fire department hooks onto them and they don't work. And so kitchen fire turns into a wildfire, maybe. I don't know. It's just a life safety issue that I think is a concern. Brunswick County allows public fire hydrants on private streets. Bender County allows it. H2Go allows it. So I think, the utility authority maintains thousands, if not tens of thousands of hydrants. The amount of private hydrants is very small. Percentage-wise, I don't know the numbers, but in my experience, there's not a whole lot of them out there. And I really think it's a public safety issue and a life safety issue. And I would love to get on the agenda to talk about it some more and maybe let the board have some input on it. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Tripp.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend that we refer this to the Long Range Planning Committee. This is a policy issue that directly relates to how you operate and design your water and wastewater system. So staff is perfectly comfortable letting Long Range Planning look at this and give us guidance.
Sounds good. Okay, next we have the results of our 2025 customer satisfaction survey. Vaughn?
Good morning. So I think those who have been here for a few years recall that part of our 2022 strategic plan to meet our strategic initiative of customer satisfaction and stakeholder understanding included a professionally, independently done customer survey, and our first one was in 2023. Today, we're presenting the results of the follow-up study that was done in 2025 at the end of last year. And to walk you through that, be available for any questions, is Ryan Murray. Ryan is the Director of Community Research at our vendor, ETC Institute. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you, Vaughn. Thank you, everybody, for being here this morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I think last time I was virtual, so it's nice to be here in person. As Vaughn mentioned, I'll do my best to answer any questions. I've got a full copy of the report. Anything that maybe is going to take me a little additional research, I'll take the question down and I'll get Vaughn a written response for y'all in the next couple of days here, hopefully before the weekend. A little bit about our firm. ETC Institute's been around for over 40 years. I've been with the firm for 20. I started there in high school. My mom used to take me there when I was a kid in high school before I could drive to make phone calls when that type of thing still worked. Now everybody's got caller ID. We all have those blocks. People do not answer the phones for these types of surveys anymore. This survey takes 10, 12, 15 minutes depending on the responses. And so that's probably another reason that folks aren't doing this over the phone. But our goal and our mission is really to help you all make better decisions through statistically valid data. And we've done that our entire existence. It's been my entire career here. I only work with community satisfaction or customer satisfaction surveys. It's either parks, community satisfaction, such as maybe like New Hanover County or City of Wilmington specifically we work with. And then we do a lot of wastewater and water surveys. So I do this all over the country. I've got a number of clients locally where we're at in the Kansas City metro area. But we've also got clients across the country where we do this. We do Orange County here in the state. We do a lot in Texas and all over the place. So it's a pleasure to be here. If you have anything, please feel free to stop me. Otherwise, I'll just kind of get the ball rolling and we'll get through the results here. So the 2025 Customer Satisfaction Survey, each one of these surveys that we do is really an objective assessment. So one of the things that I like to do when I'm on site is build through the lens at which I've reviewed the results. And so this idea is that you as board members and commissioners have specific ideas and you review and interpret those results differently than I might. Staff is going to interpret them a little bit differently, same with the residents out in the community. And I'm the guy that sees this stuff day in and day out. And so this is exactly what I do. This is the type of data I interpret. And so you'll be seeing things through that lens. And so my opinions might differ slightly, but I'd be more than happy to entertain any questions or anything like that based on our interpretation of the results. In addition to the objective assessment purpose, the object of the survey is also to help identify priorities for improvement. And we'll call that important satisfaction analysis or opportunities. The whole idea is that we work with staff to talk about how we can leverage the survey results, and then we design the survey in a way to make sure that we're developing priorities for improvement. We do this typically through important satisfaction analysis, where we're weighing both satisfaction and importance on kind of the core level of services that CFPUA provides. And we're able to manage or look at which services are going to have the greatest tug and pull on overall satisfaction. And we'll get into those results later in the presentation. One of the other opportunities that these utility surveys tend to do is give your residents an opportunity to provide feedback. It can be difficult sometimes to provide feedback to our utilities. We're busy people. It's a great and excellent opportunity for you to keep your pulse on kind of the community, how they feel about the service. Are we slipping in any areas that we need to be monitoring or managing for the next couple of years? Or are we continuing to perform very well, which is pretty much what we saw in these results, consistently high levels of satisfaction. And with that, we want to track your performance both against other communities as we can, as well as yourself over time. And so making sure that we're focusing on those trend lines is important. But we want to make sure that we're spreading those out decently. We don't want to maybe do this quarterly where we're constantly seeing these minimal shifts. Every 2 years gives you that opportunity to kind of see a major shift or a significant shift in the results that might actually have a major impact on the overall community. With that, the margin of error of the results is what really helps us understand whether or not there's a significant shift in the overall attitudes and opinions of our respondents. We collected 1,001 completed surveys from throughout the service area. These were all residential customers from the district. And what we wanted to do was ensure that the random sampling provided geographic and demographically representative results. And so what we do is we mail out those surveys to a random list of residential addresses that receive CFPUA services. And from that, we continue to follow up with that group until reaching that minimum number of completed surveys, which gives us a margin of error of about 3%. And that's kind of our goal. It'd be great if we mailed out the surveys and a really diverse and geographically representative group of people completed the surveys and mailed them back and make my job significantly easier than it is. But we know that certain groups are more likely to respond to these mailed surveys. So at ETC Institute, our job is, as soon as those mailed surveys hit, we need to begin following up with respondents. So we're following up with those randomly selected addresses, either by text message, email, potentially targeted social media ads, as well as potentially postcards or second mailings of the surveys in some communities. And we continue to follow up with that same randomly selected group, ensuring there's no bias in that selection until reaching that 1,000 completed surveys, and we just went over that goal. The results are statistically significant, have a margin of error of about 3.1% at the 95% level of confidence. So if we went out to the community, collected 1,001 completed surveys from randomly selected residential customers 100 times, 95 out of 100 times we'll get these same exact results, plus or minus the margin of error of 3%. So there's that caveat as a researcher. What that basically means is if we were to conduct this survey, 50% of people, which is difficult with 1,001 surveys, but say one person didn't respond, 50% of people said, yes, I like the color green, 50% said no. 95 out of 100 times our results should hover between 53 and 47% of people saying, hey, the color green's pretty good. That's how the margin of error plays on the overall results. So we've sampled a larger population. We've demographically and geographically represented that group very accurately according to the U.S. Census Bureau remarks. And then what we're able to assume within our margin of error that the results hold true for the entire population. And that's how that random sampling works in terms of the representation in the results. Here, what we're looking at, and your boundaries don't fully cover New Hanover County, but it's one of the best comparisons that we can provide. We want to compare male-female, race, ethnicity, household occupants, income. There's gender in there, as well as a few other factors, such as number of people in the home. What we're trying to do is make sure that within our margin of error, we're getting very close to all these figures. And you can see the race, ethnicity one is probably that most difficult one. With the customer list provided, we purchase a marketing list, which is probably 95% accurate, and it's able to give us a lot of insights into some of the households that have yet to respond, which helps us narrow our focus in terms of our follow-ups, and that's how we're able to kind of keep up with the demographic representation. In terms of what to know, if you take away nothing else except for the methodology in this slide, I think you'll have a really good understanding of how your organization's performing in 2025. Consistency is key. I think that message will be clear throughout the results. We had a margin of error of, again, 3%. So anything different of 3% or more from 2023 to 2025 says there's a true and actual difference in the perceptions. And we'll see some really positive remarks in that way. Overall, you continue to set the standard for the delivery of services. We'll see some benchmarking later on that will show just how far and away you are above national and regional averages when it comes to the reliability of your services. Staff perceptions remain exceptionally high, which I think is a really great thing, because I think it's going to continue brand loyalty. We see people in the field, or we talk to people over the phone, and we leave with good feelings. That's going to help push good feelings for the organization thoroughly into the community, and it's going to continue high or relatively high levels of perception ratings continuously. As I mentioned at the top, there's an opportunity for improvement in every survey that I do pretty much, unless a client says no. We don't want to see anything like that. So we developed opportunities for improvement based on the survey design. Those 4 items there are higher opportunities for improvement in 2025, very similar to 2023. The key here is to understand that even if 100% of residents were satisfied with all of those services that were listed, we still would have developed priorities, because the importance question is a forced ranking question. And so we still would have developed some top-down type of analysis for those areas. In terms of staff interactions, I wanted to start with some of the questions that begin the survey. We basically asked residents whether or not they'd had interaction with your staff within the last couple of years. In 2023, the percentage of respondents who indicated yes was 41%. That's dropped just slightly to 40%, not a significant difference in the number of residents who have contacted us. Mostly that's going to be with office staff in this particular line of questioning, but about 1 in 5 of those folks that have contacted us said they'd contacted both field and office staff. Primary mode of contact remains primarily the same, and those primary contact reasons are essentially unchanged from 2023. Making a payment, setting up or transferring an account, non-billing or meter reading concerns. We also see some drinking water system, questions about fees, but for the most part, it's going to be setting up service or about billing. When we asked respondents how satisfied are they with their most recent experience with your staff, we see politeness, technical skills, overall responsiveness, overall resolution, all with almost 60% in the very satisfied column alone, not even including the satisfied remarks. Most of my slides that we'll see with these 4 colors, we're going to read left to right from positive to negative. The blues are going to be more positive responses, agreement or satisfaction. The red is going to be dissatisfaction or disagreement with the rating or the item that's being rated. We try to sum the very satisfieds and satisfieds primarily for presentations and researchers. We want to see what's kind of highest satisfaction to lowest satisfaction at a glance. And so we form them this way. And I know this looks repetitive, but what I really wanted to show you all today was how you've managed in a really small margin of error. So 1,000 completed surveys is a lot for your community size. We do 1,000 completed surveys in the city of San Antonio every year, and that kind of gives you a good kind of juxtaposition of how many surveys we're doing here. The 3% margin of error is hard to beat at 1,000 surveys. It's a really low margin of error. We see multiple areas here, actually all of them, where you've actually significantly increased overall satisfaction with the quality of staff. So all of those staff interactions saw increases that were significantly above our margin of error. When we asked about field staff, field staff were more visible in 2020, or more visible this year than in 2023. To a large margin, about 5% more respondents said we'd see field staff within the last couple of years, and satisfaction ratings remain high with this particular category as well. Some of what I'm looking at here is the proportionality between the red and the blue. And I'm going to go back real quick, and you can see that same aspect here. As a researcher, sometimes we're looking through these pretty quickly to try to gain some insights. What you can easily see in both of these charts is that there's just very few people that left with a sour taste in their mouth. It's a really positive reaction to the overall results. We can also see that there's significant increases across the board for each of the items in this category. This is a really clear sign that something's going on in the organization, that we're maybe reacting a little bit to the results, but we're continuing to provide high quality customer service, which should lead to other perception related either increases or maintaining strong areas of perceptions. When we get into perceptions now, we ask respondents, what type of organization is CFPUA? About 1 in 3 respondents said they weren't sure, 13% said a private profit-making company, and about 60% of folks said a public government agency operating at profit. Essentially no change between the results in 2023. And then more perception-related items, we know respondents have firsthand accounts with some of these service levels, especially some of the items towards the bottom, such as taste, water service, or sewer service charges. But you can see that overall, we either maintained current levels of satisfaction or saw pretty good increases almost across the board in satisfaction. The areas that are opportunities for improvement are those areas at the bottom highlighted with those yellow arrows, slightly lower than average levels of satisfaction with some of those items. But those are some of the items that are most important to respondents as well, particularly that safety item, which kind of hangs towards the bottom there. Yeah, please.
Can you explain why sewer charges isn't highlighted?
Yeah, sewer service charges, for some reason, weren't quite as important as our water service charges. Sewer seems to be that service that kind of is blind in our mind until it doesn't work, and then it's very forefront of our mind, and we're very upset about it. Locally, in my home community, I do Johnson County wastewater. They used to be rock bottom performer. It was just a perception-related thing, lots of backups, especially in the wintertime for some reason. They continued to do surveys. They do it twice a year now, which maybe, in my professional opinion, is overkill, but they do it twice a year, and they've actually turned things around. And what it turned out is it wasn't as much about the service sewer, or the service charges, but it was more so, I don't know what's going on with it. I'm not sure what I'm paying for here. There's separated services there. For you all, I think it's the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority. I think water is primarily in the front of their minds. Lower levels of satisfaction with sewer service charges. I think anytime you ask about pocketbook items, we're going to rate those low in this attempt to maybe sway your minds and reduce rates for us potentially, which we know is not a great business decision always.
And they told us what was important in a different question.
Yeah, and in a different question, I don't think I have that here. I actually do have that here. We actually have the importance for priorities here. And the sewer service charges just aren't quite as important. They're at 10%, right in the middle there. You can see where about 10% of folks rated that as one of the top 3 items for us to kind of emphasize or what it should be our priorities over the next few years. But far and away, that's safety of the drinking water. And so I think that really took away from any of the other items, primarily being higher priorities, but it really kept that sewer service charges lower. Folks were really more worried, 1 in 4 saying water service charges being one of those items to emphasize. And again, the analysis is looking at below average satisfaction. And so you see those arrows at the bottom and above average importance. And so now we see those arrows at the top. Please.
Do you see, is water safety consistently an issue across the authorities you work with? Or do you think it's a focus here because of our history with the PFAS issue?
I think it's a combination. It depends on how recent it is in some communities. For example, Austin had a boil water alert right before we did their survey last year. Had a massive impact, I think, on overall safety compared to some of their historical results. In other communities, safety is not a high priority because we have consistent records of safety or maintaining high levels of safety in the system. I do think, we had a discussion with staff about this, that I do think some of the historical context here is a continuation of some of this, and I think we're seeing that lingering here. We also asked respondents, I believe, how long they've been with the district or how long they've been a customer of CFPUA, and a majority of folks have been a customer for quite some time. That was question 34. And so I think there is a sense that folks are still in that zone of, hey, there was that lapse in security or safety, and it's still impacting some of those responses. Now, in terms of overall safety, it's at the very bottom, but it's been consistently at the bottom. I talked to staff, it doesn't seem like we've had any major hiccups, and so I do think that that's a historical perception that will maybe be tough to beat until we cycle through some of our community members and kind of cycle through new customers.
So, just a question on that. I can't imagine that it wouldn't be at the top of any survey that you do.
In some communities, service charges are those highest
Well, I mean,
things.
that and service and or charges and safety would, but I wouldn't have it at the bottom. So it's going to be, I mean, you know better than me.
It's going to be safety in communities that I think have had a hiccup. And then it's going to be service charges in communities that are relatively affluent and have really good standard of service. And I know you all have a good standard of service. You just have that historical context. And then reliability is the big one.
But
so
it's also because you can only choose 3.
You can only choose 3. And so, yep. And so that yeah. And sometimes it's nice to look at these charts. Sometimes we make these bars completely blue. I like to see the intensity of that response. And so you can see the intensity of that first selection is extremely safety. Right? We see 2 really distributed throughout almost all of those categories. And so that's something to be noteworthy. But at the end of the day, you all understand the context, please.
And keep in mind that we are also very publicly trying to address upstream pollution, engaging our customers in trying to do that. So they're very cognizant of that we're still battling this issue, even though we're providing high quality water.
And again, I think staff is fully aware of these issues. We're fully aware of the context around them. I think that we, sometimes, and I'm a city councilman in my own city. It's a 7,000 person city. It's not quite to the extent that you all are leading here, but perceptions are often reality from behind the dais. And so we want to be cognizant of that. But what I've found is that your staff is fully aware of this particular context. But what I also know is that you have high water quality standards, and you're meeting those standards, and the water isn't unsafe. And so this really is a perceptions issue. One of the other things that I'll often say, especially for water and utilities, and it was very much evident last time we did Austin, is that it's a snapshot in time sometimes. Boil water alert occurs in August, the surveys arrive in September, it's going to be a snapshot in time. If we were to have done the survey in June and missed the boil water, we likely would have seen safety ratings in Austin just be a little bit different. And so that's always something to kind of consider as well. In this instance, it's been a consistently low item. So are our service charges. That's very common for communities as well. So we blend both the importance and the satisfaction together, again, below average satisfaction, above average importance, and we create this important satisfaction table. Items towards the bottom of this table are really areas of continued emphasis. Continue to invest in those service areas as you've been investing in them. Currently, the overall satisfaction is either relatively high or the importance of that item is relatively low, which means that if we were to make a massive improvement, an example, the appearance and maintenance of CFPUA facilities, it's unlikely to trickle down or flow across other areas of perceptions. As we get into the top of this chart and we see that yellow into the orange into the red, those are the areas that are going to give us the biggest return on our investment or the biggest bang for our buck and have the greatest impact on the largest number of customer residential households across the community. So if we're able to address the safety of drinking water with education and marketing, if we're able to address why your service charges the way they are and contextualize them with regional comparisons, if we're able to tell you that the taste of the water is X, Y, and Z is the reason why, we don't have a lot to do with that, we can really begin to make moves in satisfaction in those areas that are most important to respondents, and then priorities will begin to shift, but overall perceptions with the organization should improve because we've tackled those items that are of most importance to the greatest number of residents across the system. In terms of benchmarking, I wanted to provide some comparisons. The results are extremely strong. It's hard to see your historical 23 to 25 and say, hey, we're performing so well. But when we look at you against the Atlantic and the US regional averages, we're able to see that you're performing exceptionally well with some of our core areas such as reliability of water and sewer services and water pressure. Some of those areas that are in the front of mind of respondents, we saw reliability towards the top of that importance list. We see taste of our drinking water slightly below that national and regional average, which is one of those things that you will see regionally from time to time. But then we see water and sewer service charges right along those national and regional averages. We would still say that a 3 percentage point difference is that significant mark there for those items. And we see that we're just barely at that 3% mark for water service, but for sewer services charges, we're just right there with the national and regional averages. So we're performing exceptionally well. We talk about trends in terms of considering different utilities and rating our satisfaction with the value received from those. We see the overall value of gas going up, electric going slightly down, but again, sewer and drinking water staying very consistent, which is really what we want to see. We don't want to see a bunch of variability or variety in these responses. We want folks to consistently see us as that reliable provider who is continually providing that same value of service. Compared to other communities in the region, we asked respondents whether or not they think our sewer charges are either about the same, less expensive, more expensive, or we're not sure. We don't always include the don't know responses. There's such a high level in some of these questions that it does have a major impact on the analyzation of the results. The more expensive responses actually went down significantly, which is actually a really good sign. We had a significant increase in the number of don't know responses as well, which is kind of that give and take for this particular question. But the about the same and the less expensive group remains statistically the same. And when we asked respondents how much they think they're paying for each gallon of drinking water, I know Vaughn's got a little bit here, but I thought it was great to see the significant 11% increase in the rate of respondents that said about 1 penny, which was at 15% in 2023, almost or over a quarter of respondents this year.
Yeah, so we asked this question in 2023 in part because we wanted to see how effective it might be as a marketing tool. And so we did implement it. And I'd like to think that at least part of the efforts we've done in terms of outreach is causing people to understand that, hey, actually it is about 1 cent.
Yep.
I do wonder though about the people that
$1 a gallon, yeah. I think like Warren Buffett lives here, Bill Gates lives here, and some of those folks that just can't quite put their finger on how much a gallon or gallon of milk costs. What I thought was really interesting, Vaughn, and I thought about this last night after we talked, the number of don't knows that said, hey, you know, my result or my water's more expensive went down, but the don't knows went up here. But this shows that we did really effectively market this type of messaging here. And so it seems like we could use some of the same tools or techniques to potentially market some of our other areas, even safety or reliability, some of those important areas as well. So after we asked respondents, do you think, or how much do you think we're paying? We asked respondents, or really we told respondents, here's the actual cost. And then we asked, knowing that, do you think it's a good value? Over 2/3, 67% said yes, I think that's a good value. We still had about 23% saying don't know, not sure, which I think is probably associated a little bit with this particular question type as well. So we're just not sure what others in the region are charging. As I mentioned, a lot of our customers have been here for a long time, so they're probably not testing rates or looking at rates outside of the community very frequently. I gave a little bit of a spoiler here. We're going to talk about PFAS, everybody's favorite topic, Gen X and those GAC filters. This is an interesting topic, not one that we ask in every community when we do water surveys. But we asked respondents to just rate their level of familiarity with the PFAS contamination issues. We had about 51%, so significantly no change. I'm very familiar with this topic, is what a majority of our respondents said. About 41% said I'm somewhat, and we still had about 10%, almost 1 in 10 respondents saying I'm just not sure. When we asked what, if any, changes did you and your family make in your use of CFPUA drinking water, we had a reduction in the number of respondents that said that they've switched to drinking water, or to bottled water, excuse me, but the other responses remained essentially the same. This was a multiple response question. In this question, we asked respondents basically to think about all of the steps that we've taken and which of the following do they think are correct. And now this is a really big education question. We had about 40%, 37% of respondents say they're just not sure. We had some reduction in that first item, and what I wanted to do is kind of put those arrows in so we could easily see where those significant differences are occurring. But it's that those GAC filters, and then moving down, we see a reduction in the number of respondents who believe that the GAC filters are removing Gen X and other PFAS compounds. Same with that other one, making our water better and safe to drink. And so there seems to be a little bit of a confusion with some of those items. I have to admit, I've worked with Vaughn for the last couple of years on this. I'm still slightly confused on what exactly the filters are doing and how they're working and what respondents should be answering in terms of this question. But that is very common, and what we're doing is we're trying to test these messages, determine what's working. We found out that the messaging on the price per gallon really worked. Let's continue to kind of set those trends up for some of our other areas on the survey as well. We asked then, how satisfied are you generally with how we've addressed that contamination? While the overall percentage of respondents and very satisfied went down, it's really going to satisfaction and neutral, which is not necessarily a negative sign. We should continue to monitor this, and this is why we don't want to do surveys too frequently, because we will begin to wash out significant differences over time. If you did this quarterly and you saw a 1% decrease quarter after quarter, by the time you get to the fourth quarter, you're now in significance. It's really easy to miss that when you're doing surveys too frequently. By doing it every couple of years, we're seeing some semblance of significance. And once we get a third trend line in there, if it's not increasing in some of these satisfactory areas, we'll begin to be able to see a significant decrease or increase, whichever it may be in the future. We talk about billing. Respondents would love you to reduce the overcost of water and sewer rates, but at the same time, folks are pretty satisfied, it seems like, with the way that we're doing billing. We asked what type of information folks want to see or want to review on their bill when they receive it. First and foremost, it's the total amount due, which hopefully, going back to the important satisfaction, makes a lot of sense. Folks are thinking about that total amount due before they're thinking about anything else related to the service. Second is going to be that amount of water used, which saw a significant increase. And we saw significant increases on some of those other items across the board here as well. When we asked, does our bill include charges for solid waste and or stormwater, what we're really trying to do is make sure people are aware, but then we also are trying to gauge whether or not folks have that solid waste on their bill as well. And so what we've done for Vaughn is created some cross tabulations. Now, I don't think it's groundbreaking, but
yeah, so obviously, as you guys know, that we bill for the city for their solid waste and stormwater. And so these are the folks who said, yes, you do bill for, or it's on my bill.
Yep.
And so go back to that.
Yep.
And so here we're trying to gauge how much confusion there may be among the public for what is actually our role in this.
Yeah.
And this is pretty much what we saw last year.
Yeah. So about half of folks still think that y'all are still providing trash services. I've got a group in Pensacola, Florida that does do water, sewer, trash, and recycling. It's pretty uncommon. So this is kind of a misconception maybe of our organization. You know, they're getting billed by us for these items, so it's definitely something that they're thinking that maybe y'all are providing as well. And then when we, I didn't skip one, nope. When we asked, are you aware that CFPUA offers electric billing? We actually saw a reduction in the number of respondents that said yes, but I choose not to get one. But we saw an increase in the number that said yes, and I received my bill electronically, 9%.
And so obviously I can't, since it's over 2 years, we
Can't say it was completely due to the $1 printed bill fee and the outreach we've done with that. But I would suspect, given the large numbers, that at least has a part to it.
Yep. Yep.
Is this accurate to our actual hard data of who does billing electronically?
Yeah, does about 40% of folks receive their bill electronically currently?
We had to research that. Do you know who gets an electronic bill.
The percentage of customers?
The enrollment, I think it's about 45%, something like that, but we can give that number.
So if that's correct, I think that's
Pretty close.
That's pretty close.
And there's always going to be that person that doesn't pay the bill, that, it's on auto pay and they're just not sure, so. But yeah, pretty close. What I want to be, and we do a lot of voter surveys, and that's where you can really, proof is in the pudding with voter surveys. The last one that I did was in Natrona County, Casper, Wyoming. They do a 1 cent sales tax, and every year they ask respondents what would they like that 1 cent to go towards. Well, the last time it passed 71%. In our survey, we actually had 71% said they'd vote in favor. So we're actually pretty close on a lot of that. When it's voter surveys, we take a little bit more time to make sure people are voters. But in this instance, it sounds like we're pretty close with this particular aspect. That's a great question for this. Yeah, please.
Hey, Ryan, I guess the question before, it goes, is there any way that you can tease out those people who fully understand the difference between solid waste and sewer? There are a lot of people who are not in this business. There may be, are we talking about the same thing?
Yeah.
And
I think Vaughn's been on kind of thinking about some of that too, and we'll just continue to work with him to kind of tease out what people are.
And I could be wrong, but I want to say that the surveying instrument actually spelled that out, that it was
it did.
Trash.
Yeah, it did.
I think that's what your question was.
It's exactly right,
And I'm probably using, jargon a little bit there, talking about solid waste.
Yeah.
I think I can find it in a not too amount of time. I know you have a big agenda, and I don't want to keep you here while I look at things. Trash and recycling. Yep. So it says, does your CFPUA bill include charges for solid waste, parentheses, trash/recycling?
Great.
Yep, great point again. And so those clarifying points, the reason why we put those types of parentheses in there is because staff is usually thinking ahead and saying, somebody's going to wonder what solid waste really means. Let's describe it in the survey so we can present it as such. Yeah, please.
And I'd like to note, very few utilities also provide solid waste, trash, and recycling, but there are some.
Yeah.
Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, for example. But a number of utilities that are associated with a city bill for all the services. So this is not uncommon for people to have the confusion about who's responsible for what.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Very common. All right. Into communication, one of the things that we've found at ETC Institute is that communication has a big tug and pull on satisfaction. The way we message and communicate and educate can have a dramatic impact, as we've seen on some questions, in terms of what our residents know and what our residents maybe don't know. We asked respondents if they've seen, read, or heard any ads, social media posts, or public service messages related to CFPUA. About 1 in 3 respondents said they had. A lot of it was about the GAC filters, keeping fats, oil, and grease out of the sewer. So some of those most important items that we're probably working towards. Same with how we're treating drinking water, which kind of, I think, relates to that safety item. And so we see that most people are maybe not specifically recalling those messages, but we do believe that most people are probably seeing them somewhere, at least from my researcher perspective. I've not confirmed that with staff. I believe people are seeing them. The recall is the difficulty, I think, when we're actually taking the survey from time to time. Providing a variety of methods that the information could go out, trying to focus on where folks want to get information versus where they're currently getting, can help us kind of find those gaps and make sure we're fine-tuning our messaging as well. We asked also, what would you like us to focus on in terms of education and information? It's how drinking water is treated. As we saw previously, that was one of the things that folks actually are seeing in our messaging here, 47% of the 30%. So it's about 15% of our population. But most folks say they'd like to see information on water quality as well. Same with how we're planning for the future. In communities like El Paso, Texas, where we do their water survey, we do pulse surveys there as well. Reliability is the big thing. They're all very, very concerned about the future and reliability of the water system. Here, it's maybe a little bit different in terms of, is there going to be water for us? But there is still that concern there. We see down towards the bottom, water conservation, how our sewage is collected and treated. As you can see, the sewage item is down towards the bottom. We just don't care until it doesn't work, and that is the real big thing for sewage.
And also, I want to, again, this is, you get to choose 3. So it may not be that those are necessarily unimportant, but they didn't rise to the
They didn't
level
rise to the top.
top three.
Yep. And what we're trying to do, just like Vaughn said, is we're trying to see what rises to the top. So what is it when you're forced to rank something, when you're forced to choose a selection out of a larger list, what is the most important? It's the easiest way for us to really determine where is that hierarchy of information needs. And we can see, again, intensity of the responses is why we put those in those 3 different shades. So you can see that top choice is really dedicated to those first 2 items for the most part. In terms of the non-emergency information that folks would like to see, where would you like to get that? Primarily email. We see a little bit less on our water sewer bill insert message, a little bit more on text messaging. Nationwide, we've seen kind of this increased draw towards text messaging. The difficulty is that if it's non-emergency information, we have you enroll, we send you out educational information, you don't like it, you stop, and then now you're not getting any of the information anymore, and you're not going to re-enroll most likely, and we're not going to risk, I think there's a spam law now, you can get in a lot of trouble for texting people that opt out. So that can be a difficult one. For emergency information, text messages 100% seems to be the way of the future. But for now, maybe emails is the best way to provide some of that information, hoping that people don't opt out of those as well. We also asked about the consumer confidence report. I know that these are no longer required to be mailed. I know you all are saving a bunch of money that way, but it maybe is leading to an increase I've seen over the years of more people not being aware of that consumer confidence report. Most folks seem to say, hey, generally I'm aware, 37%, 40% of folks, but another 40% generally said that they weren't. So it's kind of that even split there. When we ask about a summary or when we talk about the overall results and the overall findings from my perspective, you continue to set a high standard for the delivery of water services. We see that both in the contextual comparisons that we're able to provide from national and regional benchmarking, but also your results are showing consistency, and so that's really important as well. Customer experiences, I think, is part of the reason why your overall perceptions are extremely high, but you should continue to promote the good work that your forward-facing customers are seeing. Whether this is phone staff, whether this is field staff, those folks are performing at an exceptionally high level. Those soft skills must be exceptionally well trained. Somebody's doing an excellent job there to make sure that your customers who are maybe calling with a billing concern are still leaving fairly satisfied, and that's a really difficult thing for us to do every time. Key priorities for improvement included safety of our drinking water, service charges, wastewater and long-term planning, and that's identified through that important satisfaction analysis. So that's not me as the researcher pinpointing certain areas that I think are important, but rather respondents told us that satisfaction is relatively low, and we'd like you to see prioritization in those areas. Overall, the results show stability. One of the things that I don't think I've mentioned to staff, but over the last 5 years, stability's been difficult. In 2020, 2021, we saw kind of a rising of satisfaction, specifically with like value of our government, overall attitudes towards government and perceptions. And in 2022, over the last 3 years, it's really begun to slide. And folks have been a lot more upset, a lot more dissatisfied, and we've seen this switch of our trends. And so the consistency and high levels of satisfaction is almost a misnomer. It's almost out of the realm of normal for us as of late. And so it's really positive to see that even given some of our historical safety concerns, we're still performing exceptionally high when it comes to reliability. Safety of our drinking water is still relatively in line with national and regional averages, but all those other service level related items are still extremely high in terms of overall satisfaction, which is a positive now, but also will lead you to the future in terms of messaging. So we're not forcing messaging on items that aren't as important to respondents anymore. We're going to continue to curate that message. So continually keeping your eye on the pulse or keeping a finger on the pulse of the community is great, but consistency in these results, for me, shows a lot of positivity moving forward into the future. So with that, I'll take any questions I can. This is my contact information. If I can't answer something pretty quickly today, I'll write it down. Yeah.
I guess a question for Vaughn. Vaughn, do we still send out a hard copy of that consumer confidence report? Why not?
Because we were not required to send it out.
We made a decision to save costs.
But I will say that we will print it out for a customer if they come in, and we will print out a copy.
Can we post it anywhere? Perhaps our
It is posted
website?
online.
Okay. On the map on page 3, Wrightsville Beach isn't on there.
So
I was wondering how that was handled and how it would is that because they expanded, and also second part is as we expand north, will that change anything?
Yes. So because the survey we started the survey remind me, in September, October, so close to us taking over Wrightsville Beach that we felt as though they hadn't had enough time as being our customers to really have any impact. But of course, the next survey we do, they would definitely.
And what's great about that strategic decision is they'll have a full 2 years under the service if we do a survey again in 2 years. Sorry, excuse me.
I'm sorry, what?
We don't want them to answer it right now.
Not quite.
Just add them.
They'll feel a lot better.
They will, and they already do. It's just.
How do we make sure, I know this is going to sound like a really stupid question, but we do a survey every 2 years, so how do we make sure that the same people aren't taking the survey?
Yeah, we do manage our samples in a way that tries to ensure that we're not double dipping. And what that means is basically we select that full list of residential addresses, and because my mental math is shaky, I use 100 usually. So for 100 people, we'll list it 1 through 100, and then I'll select 30% of those. And so it'll be like every third address. What we do instead of just selecting addresses as they would appear, we first randomize those addresses and then resort them, and then we select our random sample. So to ensure that the sample is fully random, there should maybe be a couple of households district-wide that might get selected twice a year or twice over the time period. But a good example is the county that we're from. Johnson County has about 300,000 households in it. We do 1,000 surveys every year, and we know from the people that complain that some people never have gotten a survey in their entire lives there, and they've lived there their whole lives. So the idea is that we want to make sure that it's as random as possible, but when we do surveys every 2 years, we try to make sure our best that we're not double dipping on the same people.
So when you see some of those reductions, could that potentially be some of those people who have already taken the survey?
Most likely not. And the reason I would say that is because a 3% reduction is going to be a large group of respondents across the board. The other thing is the sampling error. And so there should be some expected error, 3% margin of error on the results. Gotcha. The changes in attitudes and perceptions are most likely attributed to real changes, attitudinal changes in the community is what that should refer to. It shouldn't be those folks that have just received the survey potentially twice in a row, if they had.
Gotcha. And I'm familiar with Johnston County. So
Yeah.
I lived in Clayton for quite a few years.
Yeah, so we know, you know how much we complain at Johnston County.
I do.
Yeah, exactly. All right, great. Affirmation, I appreciate it.
Brian, to your questions about taste and smell.
Yeah, tough ones.
Which is totally subjective.
Yep.
How is that worded? What smells or tastes like something good to someone, another person may hate it.
Yep.
So how do you?
That's why I use perceptions a lot. I like to use the term perceptions because it's a perceived rating, right? We're rating our satisfaction on our perceived or relative understanding of that item. We ask those questions and have asked those questions for about 20 years now. I completely agree with you. It's subjective, and the water here is going to taste different than the water in San Antonio or El Paso. The idea is that through standardization of that question, we can begin to see, are there any issues with the taste of your water here? When we saw the overall benchmarking, we see everybody kind of hangs in that same area for taste and smell, and that's what we see nationwide. It's just one of those areas to continue to maintain and to continue to look at, but we shouldn't say that our performance, just because we get 36% satisfaction in the taste of our tap water, doesn't mean that our tap water tastes bad. It means that we're right along the national average with everybody else, and everybody seems to have some issue with the taste of our water.
And I could be totally off base, but for at least some of those people, I feel like they may be a proxy for the whole Gen X issue, right?
Could be.
Great, Ron, thank you.
We've also done this seasonally. Where we're from, you will seasonally treat the tanks, I believe, or clean the tanks, or there might be an influx of chlorinated water that may make the water smell and taste slightly different for a week or a few days. Locally, I understand that, and we've done surveys that kind of bookends those types of events, and you can see that in the results. You'll see like 22 high, 23 high, 25 low, and then we expect to come back in 27, and we'll change the timing of the survey to not be around that event, and we'll see kind of a back to the standard response type usually.
Well, and we are still going to be crosstabs.
Bless you.
So some of that may be a result of, at least some, of what is the source of your water, right? Like I would imagine that at least some of the people in Monterey Heights might be more dissatisfied with the taste of their drinking water because occasionally they do have issues, right? So.
Yeah, it's oftentimes a perception thing.
From the staff point of view, I shared that I'd kind of wrap this presentation from the staff up by noting that this was the very first initiative on your 2022 strategic plan, positively transform brand perception with the public and our customers. So the lesson that staff takes away from it is you can make progress on your strategic initiatives in a strategic plan through focus. You will take up a new strategic plan within the next year, so think about that.
Good job.
Sorry, one last question. Do the results of the survey get communicated to staff? Because I think it's important for them to hear that, you know, there's good perception of their interaction with customers.
Yeah, well, yes, and so we have an all supervisors meeting next week, and I'll be doing a presentation specifically focused on the staff-related results here. Yes.
But even down to, like, beyond supervisors, you know, is there something worthwhile going out to all the employees? Because, I mean, they're not all going to be in that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll share that it is my plan as your executive director to make sure that we celebrate this in a structured way. So we're going to have a series of celebrations in terms of rewarding staff and acknowledging it over the next couple of months.
Good.
That's a great point.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Thanks,
It's a
Ryan.
pleasure to be here. If you have any questions, please get with staff. We're not a fly-by-night organization, so we're happy to help now and into the future. So thank you all. Have a great meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Ryan, can you make your kids go to work?
I wish.
That was an amazing backstory, yes.
Is the owner of the business, yes.
All right, we'll move on. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. We have 3 items before you.
Yeah.
Take any comments, questions, or motion to
Motion to approve.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Items pass. Next, we'll move on to new business, administrative reports. Nicolette, attorney's report.
All right, thank you. First, I wanted to thank all the board members for their participation and dedication to the board retreat on the 30th. Really appreciated everyone being so active and vocal with that. Second, I wanted to give you an update regarding the City of Asheboro case regarding the 1,4-dioxane matter. Judge Shirley reversed the Office of Administrative Hearings decision, and it was done pursuant to a de novo review, which means Judge Shirley took the case as if it were a brand-new case and looked at it and said that, yes, DEQ was right in using the narrative standard and putting the .35 standard against the City of Asheboro. Once Judge Shirley made that order, the City of Asheboro immediately filed a motion to stay pending appeal. So we will see how that plays out in the court. I will need one relatively brief closed session item to discuss IV Custom Builders versus CFPUA.
Nicolette, the Asheboro is related to the 1,4-dioxane.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure everybody understood that. So a baby step forward. Is that how we should interpret that?
Depending on whether or not an appeal is filed, one has not yet been filed, and seeing how things play out in the Court of Appeals, it could either be a big step or a baby step.
Yeah.
So at a high level, it has been this organization's position that this pollutant in particular and others in general need to be managed at the source. So we have long supported regulation or voluntary reductions for 1,4-dioxane. And this particular outcome is driving towards our position. We'll see if that continues.
Judge Shirley, in his opinion, was very consistent with the law as it is written, using the standard definition of what is a carcinogen, possible carcinogen, and the EPA's rules and regulations and DEQ rules and regulations, which was one of the reasons why him being the Rule 2 judge was very important in this. He was very matter of fact with the law and did not put any interpretations beyond what the rule of law said.
Just for the sake of the new board members who've been dealing with this for the last year and a half, what's always fascinated me is that in Asheboro and the other areas, Reedsville being another one, the polluters have the technology in place to stop or to meet all the, the regulations. They choose not to because the Office of Administrative Services stepped in and said, we're not going to enforce those regulations, thus allowing full flow of 1,4-dioxane upstream of us that comes down to us. So it's not a matter that they don't know the technology, how to do it, how to stop it at the source. They've got it there. But at this point, the law has allowed them just to open that valve and continue to send pollutants down to us. Really frustrating.
And I'll wrap it up from staff point of view. Look at your customer survey, the previous one and the latest one, and the number one issue is concerns around water quality and the safety of the water. Through your strategic plan, you have directed your staff to be actively involved at the state level in seeking reductions of pollution. And we put a lot of staff time and resources in doing that. So we think this is a representation of the effort that you've told us to make.
All right, thank you, Nicola. Executive Director's report, Ken?
Yes. You have your normal 5 reports, monthly reports that we provide, which are the key indicators report, the safety report, the environmental report, your strategic plan update for your 2022 plan, and the economic developments project update. In addition, you have a 6th report that comes out quarterly, which is the CIP update. So I'll begin by asking, are there any questions for those 6 reports for this month?
Just a comment on number 5. If I'm reading the chart right, it's a flow chart there of our major projects, that by the end of May, we will have completed the last frontier infrastructure in place. Did I read that right?
Let me ask our chief engineer to come forward for planning. Gary, would you come forward? I'm not sure if Matt's ready to make a comment on that. Which one would like to take that?
Nobody.
Right. So as a reminder, we reorganized our engineering department, so you now have a chief engineer for planning and you have a chief engineer for project implementation. That's very high level. And they're still sorting out who says what.
And for this, I'm very grateful. I think my lifespan will be longer. Yes, Commissioner, they should all be wrapped up in May as indicated.
By May. That is a huge accomplishment. And I want to say congratulations. I mean, unfortunately for you, I kind of like these graphs, and I started going through and ticking off all the ones that are in the northeast part of there, and realized all of a sudden that represented the entire Last Frontier project, which we just started 2-3 years ago, and we've got that wrapped up by May. Holy smokes, Gary, that's great.
Well, I wasn't the project manager who sweated it night after night. I just supported them, sir. I think, this is as distinguished the Last Frontier as defined by New Hanover County.
Right.
CFPUA still has major investments that are going on in other areas that support the county's investment.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Perfect
sir.
answer. Anyway, congratulations. The infrastructure's there now.
Any other questions on those 6 reports?
I have a question on the strategic plan update. Is this the correct time?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
So on that item, going down to the environmental stewardship and protection, that is on page, 3. It says that the goal is to reduce greenhouse emissions for scopes 1 and 2 by 43% from the 2019 baseline by 2030. And then I'm reading through the updates and notes, and I don't want to diminish any of these actions, because I think each of these actions are good things that we can do for environmental stewardship and protection. But none of them relate directly to that goal. And when we were at our planning meeting or at our retreat, I heard some conversation at the front of the room about how do we change benchmarks, how do we change timelines, how do we change funding sources to address this goal? And whether the time to have this conversation is now or in the future, I just want to say, if there's a benchmark of 2030, and that was the goal that was set, changing that benchmark, changing that timeline, delaying that, pushing that back, saying that no, we're actually not going to work towards that 2030 deadline. I hear that on a lot of boards. I hear that in a lot of groups. I hear that in a lot of government meetings. And if the goal is being pushed, if that benchmark is no longer being applied, then what's the point of having it in the first place? So I want us to keep to that timeline, and I would like to see updates that explicitly work towards that 2030 timeline.
Thank you for that feedback, and I think that it's appropriate, now that you've joined the Sustainability Committee, for us to have kind of a renewed briefing on the past, the present, and then get your feedback on the future.
That would be very good. Thank you.
So, are there any other questions for those 6 reports?
Following up on Mr. Joyner's comments about the strategic plan, I noted here under the initiative, Create a Culture for Inclusion, Equity, and Belonging, it references a culture assessment prepared by our consultant. It has been drafted. Have we seen that draft yet?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And there was a series of activities, operationalized activities, that the HR committee vetted, brought forward to the board. We can, at a HR committee meeting, kind of give a briefing on what our progress is or what our plans are for those activities, and then it'll flow up out of that committee to this full board.
I see.
So we will add that to the HR committee briefing list for a near term. Might not get the next meeting, but a near-term meeting on that topic.
You're referring to the work plan?
To the work plan.
Got
yes.
it. Okay, so we'll see it flow up from the committee.
Right. We'll take your question as a driver to go back to committee and explain what our progress or what our plans are for that work plan.
Thank you.
So no other questions. Then we do have 2 informational items. The first is presentation. I will thank you for your indulgence on that first presentation. It was intentionally deep because it was so important to your strategic plan. Your staff presentations are not that long. So I will call forward Kevin Morris, who will provide a presentation on aging infrastructure and the CIP. This is part of our educational series supporting new board member education and planning for your budget.
Yes, good morning, thank you. So as Ken said, this is not nearly as in-depth as Ryan's presentation earlier, so I guess I'm bringing the shallow to the pool this morning. It's sort of a survey. The board and the Long Range Planning Committee are going to be focused on budget. They're going to be focused on CIP over the next couple of months. And so one of the things we thought it would be good to do was to just sort of give you a preview of some of the challenges that we face as a system. I brought with me this morning a really unique resource. This is a tapping registry that we have. We have about a dozen of these that are left over that we inherited from the city. And the very first page, you can see on the slide up here, if you can read it, the very first page on this 500-page book is a record of a tap that was made September 30th of 1895, right? And it is, if you read further down, it is a half-inch tap in connection 10 feet north of the north house line. And that's as good as it got back in those days, right? This was 130 years ago. And this is an indication that we were creating a connection in a system that already existed. All right, this isn't when the system started. The system's roots go way back. And if we look at a timeline starting with the Civil War and up to about 1900. That's when much of old downtown was constructed. And in those days, the storm and the sanitary sewers often were combined, and they flowed down the hill and into the river, as was done at every major city along the coast. And unfortunately still, there's 5% of Milwaukee's system is a combined sewer. Some of Philadelphia has combined sewer still. We solved that problem here a long time ago. Right, but you can see from the timeline here that much of our system was built in the years before modern technology. So, so the first car was built, right, before airplanes, World War I. So going way back, our system has some old roots. And we have inherited the maps and the plans that have come from the city and the county. But keep in mind, these are resources, these are assets that were put in the ground up to 150, 160 years ago. We can't say for certain that we have pipes that are 140 years old. It's a real challenge because the data is a little sketchy. But I do know that we occasionally do work downtown and dig up pipes that certainly do appear to be 100 years old or older. This is a nice map that shows all of our water mains in light blue. So on the outskirts, you can see the light blue. These are the water mains. This focuses just on the older mains, and our GIS staff put these nice graphics together that highlights, just because something is old doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be replaced, but certainly age is a risk factor that we have to take into consideration. We have 162 miles of pipe that are 70 years of age or older. And the gap that you see right there at the river, this also includes our raw water system, but the gap that you see up here represents the fact that the microtunnel system that we put under the river is newer than the old pipes coming to it. So that's why you see a gap in that part of the system. So that's the water mains. Let's look at the gravity sewers. They look very, very similar. And so why don't you just replace 107 miles? Why don't we just replace that? Well, the cost to replace water and sewer in an urban environment is $1 to $2 million per mile. That's why we don't replace it all. And what we do is best practice. We try to synchronize our rehab projects to go along with city street projects or stormwater projects. And so we can take a little bite at a time of the challenge of aging infrastructure. And the last nice graphic we have here shows our force mains, again, using the same approach in sort of a shaded light pink. You see all of our force mains, but the ones that are 40 years or older are in dark red. And you can see they are all over our system. We also have the pump stations, and the older pump stations are color-coded as well. And of course, the concern with pump stations is the hydrogen sulfide and the corrosion. It's a very aggressive environment, and so those need to be rehabilitated at a greater frequency than one might think. So our CIP projects come from a variety of different sources. We have recurring programs. We're doing the line extension projects for private wells. We have the interlocal agreements with the city. We've got capacity and growth projects, but the ones I highlighted in red here are ones that are related to R&R and rehab type projects like we're talking about with the older aging infrastructure. And this is a very busy flow chart, but this is a flow chart that reflects the process we go through every year with our CIP team and internally with the staff. It's a very involved process. What I want to focus you on is what's coming up. And you see the black arrow that says we are here in February. This is where we're at today. But coming up very shortly, in just 15 days, the Long Range Planning Committee will see the draft CIP. And what you see up there that I have not shaded out are actions that this board takes. So the red are Long Range Planning Committee meetings, and the blue are board board event. So we'll have a board workshop in March where we will present the draft CIP. We will then take that draft CIP with any input that we get back to the Long Range Planning Committee. And I wish my pointer worked because I'm not nearly tall enough to reach that up there. But, and then in April, you will vote on the final CIP. So the CIP will be approved a month in advance of the budget itself. So that's the process that we have coming up for you. And we found this really neat image and I wanted to share it with you. But it's folks underground working away on the sewers. I thought that was quite apt. But I would take any questions that you have.
If I might briefly note, one of the things we did to try to make sure the budget was in balance and control costs going forward for the next 5 years was to defer about $81 million worth of capital projects. A big chunk of that was the replacement of aging water lines. Once we get the final pricing in for Southside and understand the ground underneath us, we may want to revisit that decision or not. And I also want to note that we had a very successful partnership, continue to have successful partnerships with the city. So Fifth Avenue replacement, for example, was a great partnership, $15 million plus project, $12 million of which was water and sewer line replacement. You see, we have 160 some miles of pipe, older than 70 years old, in line for replacement. So sometime in that 5 to 10 year window, it might be very logical to plan joint projects to do large versions of the Fifth Avenue, if that makes sense to our partners with the city.
Thank you.
Sorry, that just triggered something for me. Can we jump back on that for 1 second? The only thing that I want us to be mindful of on Fifth Avenue is that's also where the current projections for the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge are designed to land. So who knows how quickly that's going to happen? I know we all want it to happen quickly, but anytime we're thinking about infrastructure there, that's where we're saying it's going to land. So I don't want us to build something and then tear it back up a year later.
That's right. But we have plenty of older pipe on the north side.
Sure.
Where we could develop joint projects, as long as it makes sense to our partners at the city. So with our new city representatives, what we would do as staff is kind of arm you with that information, and then you can go back and see if it makes sense. And of course, we share that same information with our peers. So that is the first informational item. The second informational item is the retreat follow-up, and this is really from my desk. So you have a memo that's within your budget packet, your board packet. Within that, we would note that we proposed at the retreat this concept of a 12-month plan. We asked for 12 months where we wrap up your last strategic plan, primarily focusing on operationalizing a management system in at least a fraction of the organization. That, we believe as staff, is our best opportunity to gain efficiency and effectiveness while maintaining product quality, which is one of our key goals in terms of controlling costs, managing costs. In this same time frame, we would expect that this board would be asking us questions to get geared up for the next strategic plan and be preparing our newer board members in terms of educational opportunities. So they will be on even footing next February at that strategic plan, or that retreat, to take in a report on where we completed your items for the last strategic plan, where there's some gaps, and then there'll be a series of reports on things you asked us to investigate, and then you start prioritizing at that retreat what you think should be our next 5-year strategic plan. So that's what we propose. Not asking for a formal vote. I'd like to look around the table and just look and see if there is consensus or confirmation that that 12 months planning strategy makes sense to the board. I'm seeing, or at least no objections, and I'm seeing confirmation from most. So I would note that within that same memo, is what we heard at the retreat were potential topics to be studied in no particular order. As staff, we have limited resources. So we believe we can study these topics to various depths, but we'd like the board to order them for us. So there's a number of ways you could do this. What I'd like to suggest is we provide this list to your executive committee, and that each chair of individual committees provides feedback to the executive committee on what they think is appropriate prioritization, and then the executive committee can come back at a future meeting to this board and say, all right, we think this is the study priority of these items, and anything else that you'd like to add to it. That's one mechanism. This is a board process, so I'm not asking at the table for debate on the process, but would suggest we start by allowing the executive committee and the chairs to start talking with each other. And if you see something that is on the list that's important to you, as a board member, we would suggest speak to your board chairs. If you don't see something on the list that's important to you, same thing. So I'm going to look around the table again. This is not, we're not asking a staff from a vote, but just making sure that this concept makes sense to our board members and there's a consensus to kind of pursue this approach of prioritizing the studies. Seeing general consensus, and that's what we will do as staff. So that's really all the feedback we needed, other than for us to say thank you very much for your very precious time in the retreat. We hope that you found it useful, and we are going to shape the next retreat over the next 12 months based on your feedback.
Thank you, Ken.
That's the end of my report.
As we move on to committee reports, Executive Committee met on February the 4th. Those minutes are in the packet. No comments or questions. We'll move on to long-range planning. Mr. Hackney.
Long-range planning, that January 22nd, minutes in the packet. Two informational items that were presented. One was an update on inflation and effect on CFP planning. An update on for master plan and wet weather model. Both those presentations are in the packet if the board wants to review.
Any comments, questions? No, we'll move on to Finance Committee, Mr. Smith.
Okay. And the Finance Committee met on March the 4th. The minutes of that meeting are in your packet if there are any questions. If not, we'll move into the monthly financial report.
Good morning.
Morning.
So just briefly on the financial position, here's a look at the end of December. We're at $51.7 million in our unassigned fund balance. If you'll remember from the board retreat, we had a pretty robust discussion about a recommendation to take that higher, and that will be incorporated into the budget recommendation for FY27 coming up. I will say that this number should continue, all else being equal, to increase. In January, we got our final payment of the SDCs that the town of Wrightsville Beach owed as part of the consolidation. Another item I wanted to bring up in terms of the budget, we presented a calendar at the board retreat. Ken, I think in the memo on the retreat recap has also included that calendar. Kind of where we are right now is trying to get some feedback on some relatively nuanced and complex revenue policy issues. Looking at meter scaling factors for multifamily and also revisiting the sewer cap that we currently have for residential customers. We briefed the Finance Committee. We have also been holding some separate meetings with the individual members of the Finance Committee, and we'll continue to do that, but looking for some feedback from the Finance Committee next month. And with a direction to incorporate into the budget recommendation for FY27. The other thing, go ahead.
Oh, and on that calendar, we did not place a HR meeting, which will occur in March, that normally occurs in support of the budget, where the HR committee looks at the pay and compensation recommendations from staff. We met as your leadership team, was it this week? Everything's running together. We have developed that recommendation, and your clerk will be reaching out to the HR committee to line that meeting up if it already hasn't happened, and that would be part of the budget process. So pay and compensation will go on the calendar in the near future if it hasn't happened already.
It's scheduled.
Thank you.
And then there was a little bit of discussion at the Finance Committee around some debt structuring things regarding the debt for Southside. And I just wanted to mention that briefly. We have proactively, through our planning and our rate modeling, I think the past 4 years, really started to take an in-depth, dive on the financial impact that Southside would have to our ratepayers. And we've continuously explored options to try to minimize the rate impact for our customers. And, one of those things, right, is the debt structure for the Southside debt. So one of the things that we are pursuing is for the SRF is extending that term from 20 years to 30 years. And we believe that we'll be able to do that. It requires a little bit of a justification that the average, the weighted average useful life of the plant will be greater than 30 years. We don't think we'll have any problem justifying that. The other thing that we're looking at, and that we've been closely working with Davenport, our municipal advisor, is trying to have discussions with the LGC to maybe do a little bit of a departure of what they would normally do in order for us to spend the SRF funds first, in order to delay when we'd have to issue the revenue bonds. All of those things help minimize that rate impact in 2030, 2031, when that debt service hits. So just wanted to give you a little bit of a briefing there, and we will certainly include the Finance Committee and the board in discussions and some education as those things evolve.
So very important nuance. We are going to be working very hard with the Local Government Commission and the Division of Water Infrastructure to try to get our loans extended. If we are able to pull that off, next year we can offer a different trajectory for rates. But we cannot, in my opinion, get you a solid answer on that before you have to make a budget decision now. Because that decision made by those other entities really drives when we'll be able to issue bonds. So we're going to, as staff, ask you to look at this budget from the standpoint of not being able to extend your loans unless something changes between now and the budget timeframe. We're going to continue to work the problem. But we do want to telegraph that we're going to work very diligently, and if those two organizations or entities agree, we can offer you better rate projection terms next year.
And with that, that's all I have, so I'll answer any questions.
John, just asking for an opinion on this. Is there any advantage or disadvantage by extending out to 30 years for the possibility of forgiveness of the SRF funds?
I think that's certainly maybe a possibility, but I think it would be contingent on future legislation. The real bang for the buck is, a 30-year mortgage versus a 15-year mortgage, right? Yeah. So it comes with a higher interest cost, but the annual debt service payments are lower. And so it minimizes that impact when it all hits in 2031. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks, John. All right, next, the committee's Sustainability and Human Resources, I do not believe met.
No, we didn't.
Communications Committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We met on January 14th. There are minutes in your packet. There was one informational item at our meeting, which was an update on the redesign of CFPUA.org. Communications staff provided an update on improvements being made to the design, content, and accessibility of our website, and received feedback from committee members The first phase of the redesign went into effect on January 22nd, and communications staff is in the process of auditing our website content for Phase 2.
Comments or questions? All right, with that, any old business or closing costs before we go into closed session?
Move that we go into closed session.
Second. All in favor?
If Mr. McLean can stick around for closed session. You're welcome.